Hi, hello, welcome to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Grace. I am a feral reader, but I have slowly started to merge other areas of my life into this YouTube channel. One thing that I never ever do on here, but I do primarily over on Book Talk, and that's got to change, is I don't do my monthly reading wrap up. So we are going to do January. We are going to start fresh from 2025 and get one done every month this year. By the way, if you're from the UK and you have not tried Yorkshire Tea's Biscuit Brew, where are you? What have you been doing? Earl Grey is the best, but biscuit tea, I love a hot drink. Right. Now, normally I wouldn't hold my microphone. My microphone would be attached to my top. But annoyingly, the top is too thin and it's just pulling at it. So we're going to have to hold it. We're going to have to ride through. To give you some context on me as a reader, I read last year 81 books. Out of those 81 books, only a small handful have stuck with me and that I can genuinely remember. So I'm on a bid this year to reduce my book consumption but increase my book enjoyment. I want to be able to deep dive further into books. I want to take my time letting them marinate and absorb. I want to start journaling, which I have actually done, so that I can come away and really think about what I've read rather than just jump straight into the next journey, which is what I was doing last year. And actually focusing on the quality of what I'm reading is going to be massively important. So I started this already this year. I went in with this attitude of I'm going to read what I want, not what I think I should read. And that actually turned out to be an incredibly interesting concept. Now, I don't have a book goal as such this year. I have bookish intentions and things that I really want to stick to. And the reason I didn't put an arbitrary number on my reading goal this year was because I will supersede it. Last year, I think I had 40 books and I obviously over doubled that. This year, I don't want to go in knowing, oh, I could probably hit 40 really easy. Last year, I hit 80. Let's go for 100. I just want to read for the enjoyment level, and I don't want to feel like I've got a target hanging over my back. My autistic head cannot handle that. I will just chase numbers and targets for the rest of my life. I'm also trying to switch up how I consume my books this year. So last year I read a lot of physical books. This year I'm going between physical, ebook, and also introducing audiobooks, which is a new thing for me. I am not a verbal processor at all. I've really struggled with it. However, the accessibility side of it, I love. I also this year want to spend more time in libraries because I love my local library. I live in Brighton. I have access to so many libraries, and I also have access to my library on my Kobo. There is literally no excuse because last year my actual book buying consumption was huge. This year I've deliberately already bought less books. Nonetheless, let's get into what I read this month in January. I've put the little fluffy muffler on because I realise I'm holding this quite close and you probably got a bit breathy there. Sorry, didn't mean to be weird. Also, if the lighting is not very good, there is a window this side of me. Probably not the best angle, but I don't have any other choice but to work with it. And it's also despicably grey and British outside. So I apologise about that. We are going to start from the first book that I read this month. I am going to go in order. This does include some DNS, but I'm going to chuck them on to the end. I'm going to give you a brief synopsis of the book with no spoilers. If there is a spoiler anywhere, I will indicate it and then you can move on. But I should be able to speak about all of these without spoiling them. And then I'm going to tell you my thoughts and my feelings. Let's go. I started off the month with Magnolia Parks, The Long Way Home by Jessa Hastings. If you are new to this channel, I wanted to hate this series so badly. I actually vlogged it for you guys thinking that I would absolutely annihilate it and it would be one of the worst things I've ever read. And I quickly fell head over heels in love with it. Now, this is tragic. It's toxic, but it's also really quite complex. genius, not thought of doing this. So we see the Magnolia Parks universe develop a lot in this book. Magnolia Parks is our female main character, and we follow her and BJ Ballantyne, who is her absolute love of life, can't live without. We follow their relationship, which is incredibly toxic. This whole universe is a world of London socialites. Magnolia Parks has this annoying but kind of likable talent of being able to know the designer, fabric, literally every intricate detail of what somebody is wearing just by eye. And BJ Ballantyne has the quite remarkable talent of just constantly breaking her heart into 1,000 little pieces. In this book, Magnolia Parks has moved to New York. BJ Ballantyne is still in London. They meet each other unexpectedly, and we kind of follow their journey of, are they going to reunite? Are they not? This is a little bit like trash TV. It's a car crash of a series. However, it is a lot more emotional than you realise. It does have some depths and some layers to it, especially as we start getting this deep into the series. This is a chunky book. And for parts of it, I was a little bit kind of like, oh God, this is dragging. Like, does it need to be this long? And then we get to the end and I realise, absolutely, this 100% needed to be the length that it was. It ripped me to shreds when we got to the end of this book. I did not see it coming. I did not expect it. And now I'm just going to put off even further finishing this series. I've got 2 books left to go and I just don't want this world to end. I think for me, this read was incredibly gut-wrenching. It was yet another opportunity where I was like, oh, am I going to actually like Magnolia Parks? Yeah, I do. I do. Because you take them at face value. You take them for what they are and for what this is. Now, actually, considering this is a bit of a kind of catastrophic, toxic, messy, romantic book, it does actually deal with some quite deep subjects. So in here we talk about miscarriage, early pregnancy loss, things like that. That was quite shocking. Didn't expect to be dealing with that. It's one of those Marmites. I think you're either going to love this series or you are absolutely going to hate it. For me, it is a very, very strong love. I really, really enjoy it. And I know I am going to be so gutted when this ends. It's classed as new adult fiction, contemporary romance, and Maggie Parks. I could eat everything about this series up time and time again. Next up, I have The Chalk Man by CJ Tudor. Now, this was actually my book club book of the month. We wanted to go for something that was a little bit like psychological thriller, horror. And this falls into the psychological thriller category. So think mid-80s, a group of young friends walking through the woods. There's chalk arrows and chalk men, and it leads them to a dismembered body. That is basically the premise of what happens in this book. It's a split timeline, so we jump between the 80s and near enough the present day. And I'm going to say it, our male main character is so drab and so dislikable. I'm so sorry, Eddie, just wasn't feeling you. There was nothing in this book that grabbed me, that rattled me, that thrilled me. There were a couple of people in the book club that were a little bit kind of like, oh my God, this is like really quite gory. It's quite shocking. There's quite a few triggers in it. I just couldn't find them. For me, it felt uncomfortably grey. That's the only way I can think to describe it. It just kind of sat there. Unfortunately, I don't feel like CJ Tudor would be an author that I'm going to rush to read again. I think I have got her other book, The Gathering, on my Kobo. By the way, I didn't realise CJ Tudor was a woman. I genuinely thought that was a male author. So my bad on that one. But all in all, it just felt really flat, really predictable. I think if it wasn't for the fact that I was in hospital having surgery, I probably just wouldn't have bothered finishing it. I'm sitting here almost struggling to remember the book itself. So It was the anaesthetic, I think, that pulled me through it. That and the boredom of being in a hospital bed. That's not a good note, is it? If that's what got you to finish a book. I wish I could say that it's going to get better. For a minute, it's not going to get better, okay? Iris Kelly Doesn't Date by Ashley Herring Blake. This is a sapphic romance. Now, please bear in mind, I am a lesbian. I am married to another woman. If there's one thing that I can appreciate, it is sapphic romances, sapphic books, LGBTQ plus books. I love them. This is the Bright Fall series. I've read the first two. I loved them. I really enjoyed them. They were easy to consume, easy going. They didn't feel overly spicy. They didn't feel anything other than what they were, right? They actually rated quite highly for me. Iris Kelly is a character in those first two books. Synopsis of this is Iris doesn't want love. She doesn't want a date. She does not want anything, but everybody around her does. That's the only way I can describe it. I've spoken quite heavily already on this book. So if you have already seen me speak about it and you don't want to see me speak again, I understand. I'm going to go into it though. This felt like an LGBTQ plus checklist. The amount of times I had to take myself out of the story and go and Google something because I didn't understand a word or a phrase. It was just so inaccessible. Even for somebody that is in the community, it felt inaccessible. Trust me, I love nothing more than learning new things, being educated, or being able to educate other people that perhaps aren't part of our community. But what I don't like is when that is delivered in a way where I either feel stupid, cut out, or just frustrated. I don't want to have to constantly start being in the story to try and understand something. And if I feel that way, then heaven help somebody that isn't already part of this community, because it was just too much. And there was also a lot of what I felt like checklisting with zero context, and that just didn't sit well for me. I don't feel like we have to hit all the marks to be inclusive. I actually think inclusivity lays in a few select marks in a very good, well-rounded, fleshed out way. And this just didn't do it. I genuinely felt like the first two books of this series were written by a different author. They had a completely different voice, a completely different tone. Iris, as a main character, actually ended up not being likable, which in the first two books, she was a likable character. So I don't understand where that change came from. She just seems to see and treat herself like she's some kind of almost sexual doll to just be, I don't even know, thrown around. Her self-worth issues was so uncomfortable to witness and to watch and to read. This is a fake dating situation, which as a trope in itself, I don't really like, if I'm honest. And I didn't know that I didn't like it until this book. What I will say is the woman, I can't even remember this character's name. The woman that Iris is fake dating, it felt like at times she was the main character, not Iris, which I think that really made me struggle creating a bond with Iris and any of the other characters at all. I almost DNF'd this and I stopped myself because it's the last book of the series. I was like, just finish it. It might redeem itself. It might come forward. Unfortunately, it didn't. And then also I swapped to audiobook just to get through it. Another thing that threw me actually, and I have spoken on this, so I mentioned just now that the first two books of the series didn't really have any smarts. What's wrong with me? The first two books of the series didn't have smarts. They didn't have spice. So why did this have it? Why would you write a series which had been relatively clean, relatively closed door? I think there was a couple of little bits in book number 2, but it was nothing major. This had full-on smutty spy scenes in it, which actually left me feeling a bit uncomfortable. And I think it's because I wasn't expecting it. When I'm reading a sapphic book, I actually really just prefer it to be plot driven. I don't really want a lot of spice in there. I don't feel the need to be adding that in. And to bolt a book onto a series, which actually probably didn't even need to be there, and then make it spicy when the first two weren't, that was a weird card to throw. And as a reader, actually made me feel really, really quite uncomfortable. It's currently at the charity shop. I have the first two sitting on my shelf and I'm debating getting rid of them as well. I got rid of it straight away. That's how unfortunate it is. I kind of wish I just hadn't read it because I spoilt the whole series for myself. I then went on to a Kindle read, and this was The Day Shelley Woodhouse Woke Up by Laura Pearson. This is a contemporary romance. I read my first Laura Pearson last year, which was The Last List of Mabel Beaumont. That was a really unexpected Sapphic book. It was fabulous. I really, really liked it. I knew I was in a bit of a slump after Iris Kelly, and I knew that I needed a book that was probably going to be a relatively good read, hence why I went for Laura Pearson. Shelley wakes up from a coma and has no idea what's happened to her, but she's convinced that her husband has caused her injuries. Her memory has been completely wiped for a big chunk of time, and she has to try and regain those memories back whilst unpacking some reminders of domestic violence and childhood trauma. So there are 2 triggers in there already if this kind of content makes you uncomfortable. However, given the context of what this book is about, it was actually a very, very smooth read. What I found with Laura Pearson's writing style is that she can deliver with such poise and such respect. She can talk about really very tricky, triggery situations and just make it feel like a very well-rounded reading experience. I really, really enjoyed the depth of discovering who Shelley was, where she had been, what had happened to her, because we were finding out things about her as she was finding them out. We were very much in Shelley's head, trying to understand what had happened, this huge chunk of her life that she was missing, and she didn't even realise she was missing it. It was overall just a nice read that I really, really, really enjoyed. I like Laura Pearson's style of writing. I'm definitely going to be picking up some of her other books later on this year. She's fast becoming a little bit of a go-to author for me, in the sense that there's always something in her books that surprises me. The way that she delivers catches me off guard. I then went into The Daughter by T.M. Logan. This is actually a proof copy, so I'm going to mark this appropriately. It comes out this month. So this is a thriller. This is my first experience with T.M. Logan as an author. Lauren is really, really excited to go and see her daughter from university. She's not seen her for a little while, but when she gets there, somebody else, a complete stranger, opens up her daughter's door. Her daughter is gone, and Lauren needs to find where she's gone and what's happened to her. Although this is a thriller, it's a very, very slow-paced thriller. It's more of a mystery, to be fair, than a thriller. Now, I enjoyed it. It was likeable, but it just wasn't quick enough for me. Lauren, as a main female character, I found so irritating. I'm just going to say it, as a mother, she comes across as so irresponsible. We are going on a journey of where her daughter has gone, trying to find her daughter in London. And she's dragging around her son, who I think was around 12. He was a young lad, and he is dragged around to the point where he ends up being kidnapped by a drug cartel. Without giving too much away, this book for me just felt a little bit unlogical and a little bit far-fetched. The way that Lauren was gathering information, getting herself into the situation she was getting into, it just wasn't quite sitting right for me. It was all a bit disjointed. The plot didn't really flow. It felt like Lauren was just bouncing from place to place to place. And it's not the smallest of books. It did take me quite a while to get through this. I think because I was already on a little bit of a bad path this month, I was just like head down, knuckle through. Plus it's a proof copy. With proofs, I generally do try and finish them. I'm going to give T.M. Logan another go, because I don't know if this was just a bit of a meh one for me, but I'm just not one for slow-paced mystery thrillers. I actually finished this month, but I finished it on the 1st, so I'm going to include it in my January wrap-up, and I'm probably also going to slightly feature it in my February run as well. Quicksilver by Callie Hart, which is a romantasy, fantasy situation. I'm going to say from the offset here, I am not a big fantasy reader. I do not have much to go off. I don't have much to compare to. Fantasy is not a genre that I'm very well versed in. So my feelings are definitely my own. This book has a lot of hype, a hell of a lot of hype. We follow a young human woman who survives a really hard fantasy world by stealing metal and scraps and bits and pieces. She basically faces death after stealing and opens a gateway to a Fey realm. In this Fey realm, she has to become a warrior and uncovers some hidden alchemist talents, all the while trying not to fall in love with Kingfisher, who is the male Fae that brought her here into this realm. Now, as I said, this has got a lot of hype, and I don't want to feed into that hype. I read this or started this actually on Audible, and the only reason I picked this is because I had Audible credits and I just figured it's everywhere. Let's just listen to it because I don't really do audiobooks very often. It caught me off guard by how much I was enjoying the audiobook of this. The narrators were absolutely fabulous. I was really enjoying the development of the characters, of the storyline. And so I actually switched to my Kindle to finish this read. Now, this is a big book, 670 pages. I do think it could have been shorter. It was quite big. However, I base my enjoyment of a book on the characters, the world, and how a book makes me feel. I don't necessarily base it all the time on the writing, editing, things like that. Sometimes I do, but sometimes I don't, especially with fantasy, because, like I said, it's not a big genre for me. I loved Quicksilver. I didn't expect to love it. I didn't necessarily want to love it, but I really, really enjoyed it. I loved the characters. I loved the world. I loved the plot. And don't get me wrong, I am sure that a human girl ending up being in a Fey world has probably been done a million times over. I'm sure it has. But what I enjoyed was our FMC. She's 24. She's strong. She's independent. She is witty. She stands up for herself. She stands up for what she believes in. She demands respect. I really, really like that. I don't know if Kingfisher is considered to be a shadow daddy. I'm not 100% sure. I don't really know what a shadow daddy is. And to be honest, I really don't care about that. I actually quite liked Kingfisher. I did, in the end, start enjoying his character. I felt like the two characters played really well off of each other. I loved all of the extra characters as well, like the other warriors. I liked the little sprites. Archer was really cool. And I enjoyed the world. I enjoyed the plot. And I loved how it developed towards the end. I thought the ending was absolutely fabulous. We've got vampire, we've got fae, we've got humans. We have got so much going on. I can understand why people say, oh, this could have been edited better, or oh, we've just seen this before. I wouldn't know because I've not read those books. I really, really don't know. But what I do know is I was so engrossed in this world, I just kept wanting more and more and more. And when a book does that to me, that's a clear sign that I am really, really enjoying myself, and it's satisfying an itch that I didn't know I had. And Quicksilver done exactly that. It was a ride that I just kind of didn't want to get off. It was my favourite book of the month. I actually highlighted so many parts of this book as well, which I did not expect to do. I might read you one of my favourite lines. 1 second. I need my Kindle. It's actually still on my Kindle. I've just realised I don't need my Kindle. I can do it on my phone. I have the Kindle app. I just don't ever use it. There's a couple of just really short, almost like one-liners in here that I loved. So, page 353, never forget, monsters thrive best in the dark. That one hit a personal home with me, along with my concern is that a tool pushed to its limit is a tool that will probably break. Page 258. Again, that hit home with me. I took those personally, but the one that I really, really loved, here's the storm. You are the peace that must come after it. Tell me, do you believe in fate's alchemist? I was like, it's simple lines like that that just tug at my heart, that just They itch something in my brain and they make me happy. It may not be the best writing in the world, but it just ticks boxes for me. Quicksilver, you were a very quick love. Now from there, I do have a couple of DNFs, so let's just run through it. I'm going to try this year to not DNF. And what I mean by that is I'm going to try and be more selective with the books that I pick up. If I know a book is probably just not going to do it for me, I'm just not going to pick it up. Whereas normally I would try and push myself to pick up all of these different kinds of books. No, quality over quantity. The 2 DNFs I had caught me off guard and I didn't think there would be DNFs. The first one is Bookshops and Bone Dust by Travis Baldry. I adored Legends and Lattes. It was a fabulous high fantasy, cozy, low stakes read. We follow Viv, who is an orc, and Bookshops and Bone Dust follows Viv again. It's a Sapphic fantasy as well. But Bookshops and Bone Dust was so boring. It was so slow. To the point it didn't even feel like it was a fantasy. It was just almost unnecessary. It was points of it felt like a direct rip-off of Legends and Lattes. So in Legends and Lattes, Viv ends up in this kind of town, village, and she opens up a coffee shop. She transforms this derelict building into a coffee shop, which becomes like a communal hub and builds this little community. Finds love. In Bookshops and Bone Dusts, it's the same kind of thing. Viv has ended up in this town situation and she finds a bookshop. She doesn't own the bookshop, but she helps bring the bookshop up and together. I DNF'd because I just couldn't get through this. It was such a slog and such a push. I got 100 odd pages in and I was like, this is just rinse and repeat. And I don't want that from, this is essentially a prequel to Legends and Lattes, but I don't want that from like duology. You need to have something that's different. Otherwise, why would you write it? There was nothing in that book that screamed it needed to be written. So unfortunately, strong DNF. I then also DNF'd Empty Cradles by Margaret Humphreys. This is based on the Australian migrant scheme of British children being sent to Australia in the, I think it was around 50s, 60s. So this is a true story, right? This should have been so poignant. This should have been almost like one of those books that I've read that plays with my brain a little bit and makes me think about humanity. And what I really wanted from this book was the children's stories. I wanted to get to know the migrants. I wanted to know their journey. I wanted to understand them and where they'd been and what had happened to them. And it felt so focused on Margaret Humphreys herself, who was the social worker that had discovered that this was all happening. And don't get me wrong, I'm sure she's a remarkable woman. But I do feel like it wasn't her story that I was interested in. It was definitely the children. She called them migrants also a lot in that book, which made me uncomfortable. And now I've just said it and now I feel uncomfortable too. I wanted to know about the children and I didn't. And although we met a few along the way, I couldn't name them, I couldn't place them. And this was definitely one of those books where you can tell the person that has written the book isn't an author. They're not a writer. And so it just felt really hard to read. It was clunky. It was going back and forth. It didn't flow. In the end, I was like, I'm not going to push through this just because it is a heartbreaking situation. I can go and Google what's happened. And that's where I was at. So that is all the books that I read in January. All the books that I DNF'd. This month, I have started my month pretty strong actually. So I'm really looking forward to bringing you February's. I am definitely, like I said, reading quality over quantity, and that is so nice. And you guys are also getting a lot of YouTube content out of me at the moment. This will be my 4th video in about 4 weeks. And I said I was going to do 1 video a month for 2025. I'm definitely on a roll and I can't moan at that. I might have to start putting some structure into when I post. It may be that I post once a week and we know exactly when that's going to happen. But when I can figure that out, I'll let you guys know because I don't want to commit to something that I can't necessarily keep up with. However, I am really enjoying just coming on, making content, talking to you guys, chatting things through. My heart will always be in the bookish content. I know that there was a lot of love on my last video, which was a get to know me, get ready with me. and you guys got to grips with me as a person a bit more, and that was really nice. So thank you for the love on that. And if you have enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave a comment. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of these and if you agree with me or if you disagree with me. As long as you're kind, we don't mind.